Psychics again? Really? Okay.
Argument 18. No psychic phenomena has been demonstrated under controlled conditions. Corollary. Whenever proper controls are put in place, psi experiments only get chance results. This is another dogmatic belief by pseudo-skeptics that is not based on facts but on an a priori belief that psi is impossible and that only inadequate controls and sloppy methods can result in above-chance psi results.
I feel like I've been over this already.
However, this is simply not so because, as mentioned in argument 17 above, the successful Ganzfeld and Otto-Ganzfeld experiments were controlled.
Very poorly, and they still failed to produce any sign of... I've been over this.
Furthermore, honest independent researchers have also verified the reality and measurable effect of psychic phenomena. One example is Daryl Sloan, a balanced freethinker with a large YouTube following.
Balanced freethinker? I think you're using different definitions of both those words than I am.
In his channel at youtube.com/DarylSloan, you will see many videos of his psi wheel experiments which demonstrate authentic telekinesis not explainable by any conventional explanations.
Seriously, Wu, your critical thinking skills are absolutely laughable. I saw it in a YouTube video, and I'm the pseudo-skeptic? Psi wheels are magic tricks that utilize convection currents. Oh, oops. I guess there is a conventional explanation.
Pseudo-skeptics will say that an experiment was uncontrolled, even when they were never at the location of the experiment.
Why would that be a problem? When controls are not in place, they won't magically be there simply because the skeptic isn't. If I'm publishing a report, it's my responsibility to convince you, the reader, that my experiment was properly controlled. If I don't explain how I eliminated, let's say, confirmation bias, I should expect that point of criticism to be brought up. Asking you weren't there, so how do you know confirmation bias wasn't eliminated is not a valid defense. It's my job to convince you.
This happened with the SRI experiments on the famous psychic Yuri Geller.
Yuri Geller? Okay, it's official. The shark has been jumped.
Psychic debunker James Randi, Geller's nemesis, and other skeptics who were not at SRI when Geller was tested made a bunch of accusations against SRI, such as poor controls and deliberate skewing of the results on the part of the scientists there, Harold Butoff and Russell Targ. But since Randi and his skeptics were never there, all they have is speculation based on their closed beliefs.
No, they can read the reports that clearly show the lack of proper controls.
Randi has no explanation for Geller's success in some of the experiments, such as guessing the exact number on the roll of a die in a cup 8 times in a row, or finding the cup with water or metal in it out of a series of cups.
Penn and Teller did a show called Fool Us, in which they challenged other magicians to do tricks for them. And if they couldn't explain how a trick was done, that magician got to perform with them in Vegas. There were several cases where they had no idea how a trick was done. This doesn't mean those weren't tricks. In fact, we can be confident that they were, since the performers were all stage magicians, not claiming to have any supernatural powers, and they also had to reveal the tricks to the producers of the show so that they could determine whether Penn and Teller's explanations were correct. The point is that even if what you say is true, the fact that one professional magician can't explain how a trick was done doesn't prove it can't be a trick, and it certainly can be a trick in the case of Yuri Geller. In fact, we know he does use trickery because he can't do his tricks without first prepping the props he uses. Give him a spoon and he can't bend it. He can only do it with a spoon that has been prepped beforehand, as clearly shown when he was on The Tonight Show and had all his props replaced to rule out trickery. He can't do his tricks under controlled conditions.
All he can say is that Butoff and Targ are not magicians and do not know how to detect magic tricks. Suffice to say, Randi is not qualified as a scientist in any way, while Butoff and Targ are.
Correct, but since the experiment in question is all about checking for trickery, that makes the scientists, who don't know much about the tricks magicians use, poorly qualified. Here's what they should have done. Let's take the die experiment. What's the claim? Remote viewing, right? Okay, then he shouldn't just be able to guess the number on a die under a cup correctly. He should also be able to read a randomly selected word on a randomly selected page of a randomly selected closed book. See? The problem is that Geller got to show what he could do, give an explanation for how he does it, demonstrate that a number of simple, intuitive, natural explanations don't hold up, and that was apparently enough. Well, that's what all magicians do. Look, no strings! Look, my hands are empty! Rule out the obvious. That's why the tricks are impressive. The way to test people like Geller is to ask what they can do, have them explain how they do it, and then have them apply that same mechanism to something else. If they can't, then it's a trick. Why can't Geller bend a spoon that's handed to him on the spot? Because the spoon must be prepped. Why can't he bend a key with his mind without first dropping it out of sight for a moment? Because he has to bend it with force. If he can copy a drawing made while his back was turned and his eyes were covered, why can't he copy a drawing made behind a screen? Because he's palming a mirror while covering his eyes. Can he do the die trick with my die and my cup from another room? If he's using magic, he should, but he can't.
During the course of his career, Yuri Geller succeeded in 17 controlled experiments in different laboratories.
This is simply false. The experiments are never controlled in ways that rule out methods any magician could use.
Have a look at these quotes from some top magicians of the world, including David Blaine and David Ben.
I don't consider David Blaine a reliable source, as he, at least at times, tries to give the impression that his own tricks are more than just tricks. I also suspect that a lot of magicians want to appeal to an audience that wants to believe that just maybe some of it is actually real. For those, saying that Geller is a fraud might be a rather stupid career move. That makes them really bad sources to cite. But anyway, none of the quotes amount to more than, "I was amazed, I don't know how he did it, therefore his powers are real." And that's an argument from ignorance. I'm not aware of any magician actually challenging Geller by eliminating the possibility of cheating, except Randy, who had Geller's props replaced on The Tonight Show, making a total ass out of him. Again, if Geller is for real, then why can't he bend a spoon that hasn't been prepped? And what about all the magicians who duplicate Geller's tricks and even explain how the tricks are done, like, James Randi? Doesn't that trump the ignorance of those who don't know how to duplicate them? You're cherry-picking. And why cite one magician as an authority but disregard another who evidently knows more? No justification is given, so...
Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, a distinguished biologist and author, has also conducted noteworthy telepathy experiments that have confirmed the existence of ESP.
No, he still hasn't.
In his books, such as Dogs That Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home and The Sense of Being Stared At, he has documented telepathic experiments involving animals knowing in advance when their owners are coming home.
Then why not also do it in peer-reviewed articles? Oh, right, because then he'd have to use proper controls, rule out confirmation bias, and so on.
And humans who were able to demonstrate consistent above chance that they could sense when they were being stared at. His findings were so airtight and irrefutable, in fact, that arch-debunker James Randi could do nothing but use cheap ad hominem attacks on him and his research.
By definition, an ad hominem attack cannot be directed against the research. It's directed against the person. Ad hominem means against the man. Also, there's a difference between an ad hominem, "you're a bad scientist, therefore you are wrong," and a perfectly warranted insult, "you're a bad scientist." Also, if it's airtight and irrefutable, why not publish it in peer review like any honest scientist would? In fact, without the application of proper criticism, how can you even tell that it's airtight and irrefutable?
Even the neuroscientist Dr. Michael Persinger of Ontario University, hailed by pseudo-skeptics for his God helmet experiments that seem to debunk NDEs being evidence of an afterlife, has announced the existence of telepathy to be an established proven fact.
And then you add this.
Dr. Persinger says that all we know for sure is that thoughts are somehow capable of traveling outside the mind through space and matter, but we don't know how or why.
So if we don't know that it's telepathy, how can telepathy be a proven fact? As for thoughts being able to exist outside the mind, that has not been indicated, nor has there ever been any attempt to demonstrate this by testing for the presence of a thought with no mind around, which would be the only way to test for it, so... But not only that...
He speculates that the Earth has some kind of magnetic field, which animals, fish, and bird flocks use as a guidance system, that somehow human consciousness may be linked to.
Okay, for one, we already know that the Earth has a magnetic field. That's why compasses work. Furthermore, if the magnetic field can somehow be used to transfer thoughts, and I'm not in any way suggesting that it can, then that's no more paranormal than using writing or sound to transmit thoughts to another person indirectly. Persinger is, probably unwittingly, proposing a naturalistic explanation. So far, however, he has not been able to make any kind of compelling case, as his findings conveniently haven't been replicated under controlled conditions. As expected, he also presents no mechanism by which this thought transfer through the magnetic field could function, well, except some utter garbage about quantum entanglement, which he clearly doesn't even know what it is. It can't apply here because we're talking about thoughts, not quantum particles. As usual, pseudoscientists stop searching for answers the second the question appears. I can't explain this, therefore reality-defying phenomenon X has been confirmed, even though I haven't tested for it and wouldn't even know how to. Argument from ignorance.
Other noteworthy people who have discovered the reality of psi in the past, whose work you can look up and research, are Ingo Swann, CIA remote viewer.
A complete waste of tax money. The Stargate project, which is what you're referring to, was terminated in 1995, having never produced any useful information whatsoever.
And J.B. Rhine, the founder of Parapsychology, who coined the term ESP, extrasensory perception, after establishing it as a real phenomenon back in the 1930s.
Ah, yes, the card guessing thing. That showed some positive results at first, but as the experiment was repeated multiple times, it was found that the results were no better than expected. Chance. Wu, it seems to me like what you mean by controlled conditions is conditions set up so that they give the desired result. That's not what it means to skeptics. What we mean is conditions under which we can eliminate interference from sources that we're not testing for. Controlled conditions are used to eliminate, or at least limit, both trickery and honest mistakes. This is necessary if you want to show that you're right, and also if you want to know that you're right yourself. But believers in the paranormal don't really care about that, now do they?